The gunshots echoed through the still Montana air as Olivia Winters clutched her swollen belly and pressed deeper into the shadows of the abandoned silo. The year was 1878, and she had been running for 3 days straight, her boots worn through, her dress torn and dirty, and her hope nearly gone. The baby kicked inside her, as if protesting their precarious situation, and she placed a gentle hand over the movement, whispering promises she wasn't sure she could keep. The summer heat made the interior of the old grain silo nearly unbearable, but it was the only shelter she had found since fleeing the small mining town of Silver Creek. Dust particles danced in the thin beams of sunlight that streamed through cracks in the wooden structure. She had wedged herself behind some abandoned farming equipment, using an old grain sack as a makeshift cushion against the hard, packed dirt floor. When the sound of horse hooves approached, Olivia's breath caught in her throat. She pulled her knees closer to her chest, trying to make herself as small as possible despite her 7-month pregnant belly. The footsteps grew closer, heavy boots on the wooden ladder that led up to the silo's entrance. She closed her eyes, praying that whoever it was would take what they wanted and leave without discovering her. "Hello," a deep voice called out. "Is anyone in here?" She remained still, hoping the intruder would give up and leave. Instead, the footsteps drew nearer, and a shadow fell across her hiding place. "I know someone's in here," the voice said, gentler this time. "I saw tracks leading in and none leading out." Olivia's hand moved instinctively to the small knife tucked into her boot, the only protection she had left. Her fingers closed around the worn wooden handle as the stranger moved a piece of equipment aside, exposing her hiding place. When their eyes met, she expected to see the cold, cruel eyes that had haunted her for months. Instead, she found herself looking into the bluest eyes she'd ever seen, set in a sun-weathered face beneath a worn cowboy hat. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with dark blonde hair that fell just past his collar, and a few days' worth of stubble on his jaw. "You don't have to hide from me," he said, his voice low and steady as he crouched down to her level, keeping a respectful distance. "I'm not going to hurt you." "That's what they all say," Olivia replied, her voice hoarse from disuse and thirst, the knife still clutched in her trembling hand. The cowboy nodded slowly, acknowledging her fear without taking offense. "My name is Owen Blackwood. I own the ranch that surrounds this land. I was checking my fence line when I saw smoke coming from this old silo." He gestured to the small fire she had built to cook the rabbit she'd managed to trap the night before. "I thought maybe some drifters had set up camp." Olivia remained silent, her green eyes wary as she assessed the man before her. He made no move to come closer, instead settling back on his haunches as if he had all the time in the world. "You look like you could use some water," he said, reaching slowly for the canteen at his hip. He unscrewed the cap and set it on the ground between them, then backed away. "Go ahead." Her thirst won out over her caution. Olivia reached for the canteen, keeping her eyes on him as she drank deeply of the cool, sweet water. It was the freshest she'd tasted in days. "Thank you," she said, reluctantly offering it back. "Keep it," Owen said. "I've got more back at the ranch." He paused, taking in her disheveled appearance, the protective way she curled her arm around her belly. "Miss, I don't mean to pry, but you look like you could use a proper meal and a safe place to rest. My ranch is about 3 miles east of here. My sister lives there too. You wouldn't be alone with just me, if that's your worry." Olivia hesitated. Trust was a luxury she couldn't afford, not after what had happened in Silver Creek. But the baby kicked again, reminding her that it wasn't just her own life at stake. "How do I know I can trust you?" she asked bluntly. Owen's lips quirked in a half-smile. "You don't, but I give you my word as a Blackwood that no harm will come to you on my land." He stood slowly, careful not to make any sudden movements. "I'll ride back to the ranch and return with my sister, Abigail. She can bring you back if you'd feel safer that way." Something in his straightforward manner and steady gaze made Olivia want to believe him. Perhaps it was desperation, or perhaps it was instinct, but she found herself nodding. "I'd appreciate that," she said softly. Owen nodded. "I'll be back within the hour. In the meantime." He reached into his saddlebag and pulled out a small package wrapped in cloth, some jerky and biscuits, not much, but it'll tide you over. "Why are you helping me?" Olivia couldn't help but ask as she accepted the food. Owen paused at the ladder. "Because someone once helped me when I needed it most." With that enigmatic answer, he descended the ladder and was gone, the sound of hoofbeats gradually fading into the distance. True to his word, Owen returned less than an hour later, accompanied by a woman with the same blue eyes and a no-nonsense expression. Abigail Blackwood was shorter than her brother, but carried herself with the same quiet confidence. She wore practical riding clothes and had her hair braided and pinned up under a wide-brimmed hat. "Miss, I'm Abigail," she said, climbing into the silo with sure steps. "My brother says you might need some assistance." Olivia had used the time to gather her meager belongings, a small bundle of clothes, a locket containing a sketch of her parents, and a few coins sewn into the hem of her dress. She stood as Abigail approached, one hand resting protectively on her belly. "I'm Olivia," she said, deciding to offer her real name. "Olivia Winters." "Well, Miss Winters, you're welcome to come back to our ranch. We've got a spare room, hot food, and clean water." Abigail's direct gaze took in Olivia's condition. "And it looks like you might be needing a midwife before too long. I've helped deliver most of the babies in these parts for the last 5 years." Relief washed over Olivia at those words. Finding a midwife had been one of her greatest concerns. "That's very kind of you." "It's not kindness, it's basic human decency," Abigail replied matter-of-factly. "Now, can you ride, or would you prefer the wagon? Owen brought both, not knowing your condition." "I can ride," Olivia said, determined not to be more of a burden than necessary. "I grew up on a farm in Missouri." "I've been riding since before I could walk." Abigail nodded approvingly. "Missouri stock. That explains the backbone. Come on, then." Outside, Owen waited with 3 horses, his own large chestnut gelding, a gentler-looking mare for Olivia, and Abigail's sturdy pinto. He helped Olivia mount, his hands strong and steady as he boosted her into the saddle, careful to accommodate her pregnant belly. As they rode toward the Blackwood ranch, Olivia felt a curious mixture of relief and apprehension. She was grateful for the unexpected kindness, but couldn't shake the fear that had been her constant companion for months. Owen rode slightly ahead, his broad shoulders silhouetted against the setting sun, while Abigail kept pace beside her. "My brother's a good man," Abigail said quietly, as if reading Olivia's thoughts. "One of the best I know. Whatever trouble you're in, you'll be safe with us." Olivia wanted to believe her. As they crested a rise, the Blackwood ranch came into view, a sturdy main house with a wide porch, a large barn, several outbuildings, and corrals containing horses and cattle. Smoke rose from the chimney, and a few ranch hands could be seen tending to evening chores. It looked like everything a home should be, and Olivia felt a pang of longing so acute it brought tears to her eyes. "It's not much," Owen said, misinterpreting her emotion as she wiped hastily at her eyes. "But it's ours." "It's beautiful," Olivia said truthfully. After months of running, the solid permanence of the ranch was overwhelmingly appealing. The ranch hands looked up curiously as they rode in, but at a quick shake of Owen's head, they returned to their tasks without comment. A young boy of about 12 ran out to take their horses. "This is Timothy," Owen introduced him. "He helps around the ranch. Tim, this is Miss Winters. She'll be staying with us for a while." Timothy nodded respectfully. "Madam," he said, taking the reins of her mare. Owen helped Olivia down from her horse, his hands lingering at her waist only long enough to ensure she was steady on her feet. "Let's get you inside," he said. "Mrs. Holloway, our cook, always makes enough to feed an army." The interior of the Blackwood home was simple but comfortable, polished wood floors covered with colorful woven rugs, sturdy furniture built for use rather than show, and walls adorned with a few family portraits and landscapes. A large stone fireplace dominated the main room, and the scent of cooking food wafted from the kitchen at the back of the house. "Abigail will show you to your room," Owen said. "You can rest and freshen up before supper. We eat at 6. "Thank you," Olivia said, meeting his eyes directly for the first time. "I don't know how I'll ever repay your kindness." "No need for repayment," Owen replied, removing his hat and running a hand through his hair. "Just get some rest." Abigail led Olivia upstairs to a small but clean bedroom with a window overlooking the western pastures. A patchwork quilt covered the bed, and a basin of water sat ready on the washstand. "The washroom is at the end of the hall," Abigail explained. "I'll bring you some clean clothes." "We're not the same size, but I've got a dress that should accommodate your condition. It was our mother's." "Your mother?" Olivia began hesitantly. "Passed 5 years ago," Abigail said matter-of-factly. "Influenza. Our father 2 years before that. It's just Owen and me now, running the ranch." "I'm sorry for your loss," Olivia said sincerely. Abigail's expression softened slightly. "Thank you. I'll leave you to rest now. Supper's in an hour, but no one will mind if you'd rather eat up here tonight." Once alone, Olivia sank onto the edge of the bed, overwhelmed by the events of the day. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to believe that perhaps, just perhaps, she had found sanctuary. As the baby moved within her, she whispered, "We might be okay after all, little one." Supper at the Blackwood Ranch was a communal affair. In addition to Owen, Abigail, and Timothy, there were 3 ranch hands: Hank, an older man with a grizzled beard, Miguel, a quiet Mexican cowboy, and Davis, a former soldier from back east. Mrs. Holloway, the cook, was a plump, cheerful widow who fussed over everyone, especially Olivia. "Land sakes, child, you're eating for 2. Have another helping," she insisted, spooning more stew onto Olivia's plate. Despite her initial reluctance, Olivia found herself drawn into the easy camaraderie of the table. No one asked intrusive questions, though she caught curious glances now and then. Owen sat at the head of the table, occasionally contributing to the conversation, but mostly observing with those steady blue eyes that seemed to miss nothing. After supper, while the men moved to the porch to smoke, Abigail drew Olivia aside. "I don't mean to pry," she said quietly, "but as you're in a delicate condition, I should know if there's a husband who might come looking for you." Olivia tensed. "No husband," she said, her voice flat. "And I'd rather not talk about the baby's father, if that's all right." Abigail studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Fair enough, but if you're running from someone, Owen and I should know, not just for your sake, but for the safety of everyone at the ranch." Olivia hesitated, torn between her instinct for secrecy and the genuine concern in Abigail's voice. "His name is Victor Caldwell," she finally said. "He owns the largest silver mine in Silver Creek, about 50 miles west of here." "I know of him," Abigail said, her expression darkening. "He has a reputation." "Not a good one, I imagine," Olivia said bitterly. "I was working as a teacher in Silver Creek. Victor pursued me. When I refused his advances, he became insistent. One night after school, he—" She trailed off, unable to continue. "You don't need to say more," Abigail said, placing a gentle hand on Olivia's arm. "And the baby is his?" Olivia nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "When he found out, he was furious. Said I'd trapped him, that I was trying to force him into marriage. He offered me money to take care of it. When I refused, he threatened to have me arrested for theft, said he'd plant stolen items in my room and have the sheriff, who's in his pocket, lock me up until I lost the baby or agreed to his terms." "So you ran," Abigail finished for her. "I had no choice," Olivia said. "He has men everywhere, looking for me. That's why I was hiding in the silo. I heard gunshots and thought they'd found me." "Those were probably just Owen and the boys hunting," Abigail reassured her. "We're 50 miles from Silver Creek, and the Blackwood name carries weight in these parts. Caldwell doesn't have jurisdiction here." "You don't understand," Olivia said desperately. "He's obsessed. He won't stop until he finds me. Then we'll just have to make sure he doesn't. came Owen's voice from the doorway. Olivia started, wondering how much he had heard. His expression was unreadable as he stepped into the room, his hat in his hands. "I apologize for eavesdropping," he said, "but if Victor Caldwell is the threat you're running from, you should know that I have some history with him myself." "What kind of history?" Olivia asked warily. "The kind that means he won't set foot on Blackwood land if he values his life," Owen replied, his voice hardening. "5 years ago, he tried to force us to sell part of our water rights by damming up the creek that feeds our eastern pastures. When that didn't work, his men accidentally started a fire that burned down our old barn and killed some valuable stock." "I'm sorry," Olivia said. "I had no idea." "No reason you should have," Owen said. "The point is, I understand what kind of man he is. And I want you to know that you're safe here for as long as you choose to stay." The sincerity in his voice nearly undid her. After months of fear and suspicion, the offer of unconditional sanctuary was almost too much to bear. "Thank you," she managed, her voice thick with emotion. Owen nodded, seeming slightly uncomfortable with her gratitude. "Get some rest, Miss Winters. Tomorrow's soon enough to worry about what comes next." That night, sleeping in a real bed for the first time in weeks, Olivia dreamed not of being pursued, but of blue eyes and a steady voice saying, "You don't have to hide from me." The following days established a routine. Olivia, determined not to be idle, helped Mrs. Holloway in the kitchen and assisted Abigail with the household accounts, putting her education to good use. Her pregnancy limited her physical activities, but she found satisfaction in contributing what she could to the running of the ranch. Owen was often gone from dawn until dusk, working with the cattle or riding the boundaries of his property. When their paths crossed, he was unfailingly polite, but maintained a certain reserve that Olivia found both frustrating and intriguing. She caught him watching her sometimes, his expression thoughtful, but he would quickly look away when she noticed. One evening, about a week after her arrival, Olivia sat on the porch, enjoying the cooler air after a hot summer day. The sun was setting behind the distant mountains, painting the sky in vivid oranges and pinks. She heard footsteps and looked up to see Owen approaching, his shirt damp with sweat from the day's work. "Mind if I join you?" he asked, gesturing to the empty chair beside her. "It's your porch," she replied with a small smile. He sat, stretching his long legs out in front of him. "How are you feeling today?" "Better," Olivia said truthfully. "Your sister says the baby is positioned well and everything seems normal." Owen nodded, his eyes on the sunset. "Abigail knows her business. She's delivered half the children in the county." They sat in companionable silence for a few minutes before Olivia gathered her courage to ask the question that had been on her mind. "Why did you help me, Mr. Blackwood? Really?" He considered her question, taking his time to answer. "When I found you in that silo, you reminded me of someone," he finally said. "A young woman I knew during the war." "You fought in the war?" Olivia asked, surprised. Owen nodded. "Confederate cavalry." "I was barely 18 when I enlisted, full of foolish notions about glory and honor." His mouth twisted in a grimace. "Reality was somewhat different." "What happened to the woman who reminded you of me?" Olivia asked softly. "Her name was Sarah," Owen said, his voice distant with memory. "She was pregnant and hiding in a burned-out church in Tennessee when our patrol found her. Her husband had been killed at Shiloh, and she had nowhere to go. Our captain wanted to leave her, said she wasn't our concern, but I couldn't do it." He paused, staring out at the darkening landscape. "I helped her reach her sister's home in Kentucky. It was the one decent thing I did in that whole bloody war." "That was very brave," Olivia said. Owen shook his head. "It wasn't bravery, it was basic humanity, something I'd forgotten until I saw her." He turned to look at Olivia directly. "When I found you in that silo, I remembered what it was like to do the right thing simply because it was right." Olivia was moved by his candor. "Well, I'm grateful, whatever your reasons. You've become a real asset around here," Owen said, changing the subject. "Mrs. Holloway says you're a natural in the kitchen, and Abigail tells me you've straightened out our accounts better than the bank in Helena could have. Olivia felt herself blushing at the praise. I enjoy feeling useful, and it helps keep my mind off other things. Caldwell, Owen said, his voice hardening. Yes, Olivia confirmed. I know I can't hide forever once the baby comes. You're welcome to stay here as long as you need, Owen interrupted. I meant what I said about that. You've already done so much, Olivia protested. I can't impose on your generosity indefinitely. It's not an imposition, Owen said firmly. And if Caldwell does come looking, he'll find more than he bargained for. The protective edge in his voice sent a peculiar warmth through Olivia's chest. It had been so long since anyone had stood up for her, had put her safety above their own interests. Thank you, she said simply, unable to find words adequate to express her gratitude. Owen nodded, then rose to his feet. I should get cleaned up for supper. Mrs. Holloway gets cross if we're late to the table. As he walked away, Olivia found herself watching the broad set of his shoulders, the confident stride that spoke of a man comfortable in his own skin. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to acknowledge the stirring of attraction. It was foolish, of course. She was pregnant with another man's child, running from a powerful enemy, with nothing to offer but complications. And yet, something about Owen Blackwood made her wonder if, perhaps, there might be a future beyond mere survival. The weeks passed, and July gave way to August. The heat was relentless, but Olivia found herself settling into life at the Blackwood Ranch with surprising ease. Her pregnancy progressed normally, and under Abigail's watchful care, she began to regain the weight she'd lost during her desperate flight from Silver Creek. Owen remained somewhat of an enigma. Some days, he would seek out her company, engaging her in conversations about books they had both read or asking her opinion on ranch matters. Other days, he seemed to deliberately keep his distance, speaking to her only when necessary. Olivia tried not to read too much into these fluctuations, reminding herself that her stay at the ranch was temporary, a sanctuary until she could figure out her next steps. One particularly hot afternoon, Olivia was helping Mrs. Holloway preserve peaches from the small orchard behind the house. The kitchen was stifling, and Mrs. Holloway had just suggested they take a break when Timothy burst through the door, his young face flushed with excitement. "Riders coming," he announced. 6 of them from the west. Olivia's heart sank. The west meant Silver Creek. Before panic could fully take hold, Owen appeared behind Timothy, his expression grim. "Get Miss Winters upstairs," he instructed Mrs. Holloway, "and fetch Abigail from the henhouse." "Is it him?" Olivia asked, her voice barely audible as fear constricted her throat. "Don't know yet," Owen said, strapping on his gun belt. "But we're not taking chances. Go with Mrs. Holloway now." From the upstairs window of her room, Olivia could see the approaching riders, 6 men on horseback, moving at a steady pace toward the ranch house. In the lead was a figure she recognized with a jolt of terror. Victor Caldwell, his black hat and expensive riding clothes unmistakable even at a distance. Abigail joined her at the window, a shotgun in her hands. "Stay back," she advised Olivia. "No need to let them know you're here if they don't already." Downstairs, they could hear the sound of boots on the porch, then Owen's voice, level and controlled. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" Victor's reply was too low to make out, but his arrogant tone carried even if the words didn't. The conversation continued for several minutes, voices occasionally rising but never reaching the point of shouting. Then came the sound of boots on the stairs, and both women tensed. There was a knock at the bedroom door. "It's me," came Owen's voice. Abigail opened the door, the shotgun still ready in her hands. Owen stepped inside, his face set in hard lines. "It's Caldwell, all right," he confirmed. "Claims he's looking for a disturbed young woman who stole money from him and ran off. Says she's been making wild accusations to cover her theft." "That's a lie," Olivia exclaimed, her hands protectively cradling her belly. "I know that," Owen said, his voice gentling as he looked at her. I didn't tell him you were here, said I hadn't seen anyone matching his description. Did he believe you? Abigail asked skeptically. Owen's mouth quirked in a humorless smile. Not for a minute, but he can't prove otherwise, and he knows better than to push too hard on Blackwood land. What if he comes back with the sheriff? Olivia asked, voicing her deepest fear. Sheriff Reynolds is a friend, Owen assured her. He knows Caldwell's reputation as well as anyone, and more importantly, he respects property rights. Without evidence that you're here, he won't search the place. But Caldwell won't give up, Olivia said desperately. He's not the type to accept defeat. No, he's not, Owen agreed, which is why we need to consider our options. He glanced at his sister. Abby, could you give us a moment? Abigail looked between them, then nodded. I'll keep watch from the landing, call if you need me. She left, closing the door behind her. Once they were alone, Owen's composure seemed to falter slightly. He removed his hat, running a hand through his hair in a gesture Olivia had come to recognize as a sign of inner turmoil. I have a proposition for you, he said finally, meeting her eyes directly. It's not ideal, and you have every right to refuse, but I think it might be the best solution given the circumstances. What kind of proposition? Olivia asked warily. Owen took a deep breath. Marriage, he said simply. Olivia stared at him, certain she had misheard. Marriage? She repeated incredulously. As my wife, you'd have the protection of my name and my property, Owen explained, his words coming faster now as if he'd rehearsed them. Caldwell couldn't touch you without going through me, and legally, the baby would be presumed to be mine. It would give you legitimate standing in the community and make his accusations of theft look like the fabrications they are. You're proposing a marriage of convenience, Olivia said slowly, trying to process what he was suggesting. Owen nodded. It needn't be more than that if you don't wish it. You'd have your own room, your own independence. I wouldn't expect. He paused, a flush creeping up his neck. That is to say, there would be no obligations beyond what you're comfortable with. Why would you do this? Olivia asked, genuinely bewildered. You hardly know me. I know enough, Owen said quietly. I know you're brave and resourceful. I know you're willing to risk everything for your child. I know you're honest and hardworking. He hesitated, then added, and I know that in the short time you've been here, you've brought something to this house that's been missing since my parents died. Olivia felt tears welling in her eyes, overwhelmed by his words and the impossible choice before her. I can't ask you to take on another man's child, she protested. You're not asking. I'm offering, Owen corrected her. And as for the child, well, I've always wanted a family. This might not be the way I imagined it happening, but life rarely follows our plans. A shadow crossed his face. I learned that in the war. Olivia studied him, this man who had already shown her more kindness than she had any right to expect. There was no denying she was drawn to him, his quiet strength, his integrity, the gentleness that belied his imposing physical presence. But marriage, it seemed an extreme solution and one that might lead to resentment down the road. What if you meet someone else? She asked hesitantly. Someone you could truly love. Something flickered in Owen's blue eyes, too quickly for her to interpret. I'm 32 years old, Miss Winters. If that woman existed, I believe I would have found her by now. And what about me? Olivia pressed. What if I want more someday than a marriage of convenience? Then we would discuss it like rational adults, Owen said simply. I'm not proposing to lock you in a cage, Olivia. I'm offering you a safe harbor for as long as you need one. It was the first time he had used her given name, and the sound of it in his deep voice sent an unexpected shiver through her. She closed her eyes, weighing her options. In truth, they were limited. She could continue running, always looking over her shoulder, bringing her child into a life of constant fear. Or she could accept this imperfect but honorable solution from a man who had proven himself trustworthy. When would this happen? She asked, opening her eyes to find him watching her intently. As soon as possible, Owen replied. Today, if you're willing. I sent one of the hands to fetch Pastor Mitchell when I saw Caldwell approaching. He should be here within the hour. You were that certain I'd agree? Olivia asked, a hint of indignation in her voice. Owen shook his head. Not at all, but I wanted to be prepared if you did. Time is of the essence, given Caldwell's appearance. Olivia took a deep breath, placing her hands on her swollen belly where the baby kicked steadily, as if urging her to make a decision. Yes, she said finally. I accept your proposal, Mr. Blackwood. Relief washed over Owen's face. Owen, he corrected her gently. If you're going to be my wife, you should probably use my given name. Owen, Olivia repeated, testing the feel of it on her tongue. Despite the circumstances, a small, unexpected flutter of anticipation stirred within her at the thought of becoming this man's wife, even in name only. The wedding was a simple affair, conducted in the Blackwood parlor as the sun began to set. Pastor Mitchell, a kindly older man who had known the Blackwood family for years, asked no uncomfortable questions when presented with a very pregnant bride. Abigail stood as witness, her face betraying nothing of her thoughts about her brother's sudden marriage. Mrs. Holloway had hastily prepared a special supper, and even the ranch hands were invited to share in the celebration, their curious glances at Olivia's condition tempered by genuine good wishes. As they exchanged vows, Olivia found herself studying Owen's face in the golden light of the setting sun. There was a solemnity in his expression that went beyond the serious nature of the ceremony, a depth of commitment that made her wonder if perhaps this arrangement meant more to him than he had let on. When Pastor Mitchell pronounced them husband and wife, Owen hesitated only briefly before leaning down to place a chaste kiss on her lips. It was the barest touch, over in an instant, but Olivia felt it like a brand against her skin, a promise of possibilities she had not allowed herself to consider. The celebration afterward was muted but genuine. Timothy had decorated the dining room with wildflowers, and Miguel produced a fiddle, playing cheerful tunes that had everyone tapping their feet. Owen kept close to Olivia's side throughout the evening, his hand occasionally coming to rest at the small of her back in a protective gesture that felt both foreign and oddly right. As the night drew on, Olivia found herself growing tired, the excitement of the day and the advanced state of her pregnancy taking their toll. Owen noticed immediately. You should rest, he said quietly. It's been a long day. The implication of what would normally follow a wedding night hung unspoken between them. Owen cleared his throat. I've moved my things to the small room next to the study. Your room remains yours. Gratitude and something like disappointment mingled in Olivia's chest. Thank you, she said. For everything. No need for thanks between husband and wife, Owen replied, his voice carrying a hint of warmth that hadn't been there before. That night, lying in her bed, their marriage unconsummated but legally binding Olivia tried to make sense of the whirlwind turn her life had taken. 2 weeks ago, she had been hiding in an abandoned silo, terrified and alone. Now she was Olivia Blackwood, mistress of a prosperous ranch, with a husband who had promised to protect her and her unborn child. It wasn't love, she told herself firmly. It was an arrangement of mutual benefit. Owen gained a wife to help manage his household, and she gained protection from Victor Caldwell. Yet as she drifted off to sleep, she couldn't help but remember the feel of Owen's lips against hers, gentle and tentative, and wonder what it might be like if their marriage became more than just a convenient solution to her problems. The weeks following the hasty wedding brought adjustments for everyone at the Blackwood Ranch. Olivia settled into her role as Mrs. Blackwood with a mixture of gratitude and trepidation. The ranch hands treated her with a new deference, and Mrs. Holloway began deferring to her on household matters. Abigail, after an initial period of reserve, seemed to accept the situation with pragmatic grace, even helping Olivia prepare the nursery in a small room adjacent to her bedroom. Owen was unfailingly considerate, including Olivia in discussions about the ranch and seeking her input on decisions that affected the household. Yet he maintained a certain distance, careful never to intrude on her privacy or make demands. They took their meals together, sometimes conversed in the evenings on the porch, but he never presumed upon their marital status, never entered her bedroom or made advances of any kind. It was a limbo of sorts more than strangers, less than lovers, bound by vows but separated by circumstances and unspoken hesitations. One evening, in early September, as they sat on the porch watching a spectacular sunset, Olivia finally broached the subject that had been weighing on her mind. "Do you regret it?" she asked, her hands resting on her belly, which seemed to grow larger by the day. "Marrying me, I mean." Owen looked surprised by the question. "No," he said without hesitation. "Why would you think that?" Olivia shrugged, feeling suddenly self-conscious. "You've taken on an enormous responsibility. A wife you didn't court, a child that isn't yours, and I've brought danger to your doorstep." "Caldwell hasn't shown his face since the wedding," Owen pointed out, "and as for the rest..." He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "I made my choice with open eyes, Olivia. I don't regret it. But you keep your distance," she said softly, not looking at him. "Sometimes I feel as though you're uncomfortable around me." Owen was silent for so long that Olivia feared she had offended him. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and measured. "I keep my distance because I promised you a marriage of convenience, not one where you might feel obligated in ways you never agreed to." Olivia turned to look at him then, surprised by the rawness in his tone. "What do you mean?" Owen met her gaze, and for once he didn't look away. "I mean that I find myself drawn to you in ways that go beyond our arrangement, and I don't want you to feel pressured by that, especially in your condition." Olivia's heart quickened at his admission. "Drawn to me?" She repeated, hardly daring to believe what she was hearing. "Yes," Owen said simply. "You're a remarkable woman, Olivia, brave, intelligent, resilient, and..." He hesitated, then continued with quiet honesty, "And I find myself thinking of you as my wife in more than just name." The confession hung between them in the gathering twilight. Olivia felt a flush spreading across her cheeks, along with a surge of something that felt dangerously like hope. "I don't know what to say," she admitted. "You don't need to say anything," Owen assured her quickly. "I didn't tell you this to make you uncomfortable or to change the terms of our agreement. I just wanted to be honest about why I might seem distant at times." Olivia gathered her courage. "What if I told you that I've been having similar thoughts?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Owen went very still. "Have you?" he asked, his tone carefully neutral. "Yes," Olivia admitted, finding it easier to speak now that she'd begun. "I know it makes no sense. We barely know each other. I'm carrying another man's child, but I find myself..." She paused, searching for the right words. "I find myself thinking of you at odd moments of the day, wondering what you're doing, looking forward to our conversations in the evening, noticing things about you that I have no business noticing as your convenient wife." A smile slowly spread across Owen's face, transforming his usually serious expression into something that made Olivia's breath catch. "What kind of things?" he asked, his voice lighter than she'd ever heard it. "The way you always check on the horses before you come in for the night," she said, smiling back despite her nervousness. "The way you listen so intently when anyone is speaking to you, as if their words are the most important thing in the world. The way you're always the first to offer help and the last to accept it." Owen's smile deepened. "I had no idea you were paying such close attention." "Neither did I," Olivia confessed. "It snuck up on me." They sat in silence for a moment, a new awareness humming between them. Finally, Owen reached across the space separating their chairs, offering his hand palm up. After only a brief hesitation, Olivia placed her hand in his. His fingers closed around hers, warm and calloused from ranch work. "Where does this leave us?" Olivia asked, both thrilled and terrified by the turn the conversation had taken. "Wherever we want it to," Owen replied, his thumb tracing gentle circles on the back of her hand. We've done everything backward, married first, now perhaps considering courtship. His expression grew more serious. But I want you to know that I would never rush you, Olivia, especially not now, with the baby coming so soon. I appreciate that, Olivia said sincerely. I think I'd like to see where this might lead, if that's all right with you. The smile that lit Owen's face was answer enough. They sat together as darkness fell, hands entwined, not speaking much but sharing a new understanding. When Olivia finally rose to go inside, tired from the weight of her pregnancy, Owen stood with her, keeping her hand in his. At the foot of the stairs, he hesitated, then bent down to place a gentle kiss on her forehead. "Good night, Mrs. Blackwood," he said softly. "Good night, Mr. Blackwood," she replied, a smile in her voice. That night, alone in her room, Olivia placed her hands on her rounded belly, feeling the strong kicks of the child within. "Things are changing, little one," she whispered. "I think, perhaps, for the better." 2 weeks later, in the pre-dawn hours of a cool September morning, Olivia woke to a sharp pain that took her breath away. She lay still, waiting, and when it came again 10 minutes later, she knew. The baby was coming. She called for Abigail, who had been sleeping in the adjacent room for the past week, in anticipation of this moment. The older woman was instantly alert, her capable hands checking Olivia's condition with practiced efficiency. "Your waters haven't broken yet, but you're definitely in labor," she confirmed. "First babies often take their time, so try not to worry. I'll send Timothy for the doctor just to be safe and wake Owen." "No, don't wake him yet," Olivia protested. "Let him sleep a while longer." "There's nothing he can do at this stage." Abigail gave her a knowing look but nodded. "As you wish, but he'll have my hide if I let him sleep through too much of his child's birth." His child. The words gave Olivia a peculiar pang. Legally, the baby would bear the Blackwood name, would be raised as Owen's son or daughter. But biologically, the child was the product of violence, of a man she despised. How would Owen truly feel when faced with the reality of another man's baby in his home? The labor progressed slowly throughout the morning. By the time Owen was up and about, Olivia was walking the upstairs hallway with Abigail's support, trying to ease the increasingly painful contractions. When he appeared at the top of the stairs, his face etched with concern, Olivia felt a rush of emotion so strong it brought tears to her eyes. "Is there anything I can do?" he asked, looking somewhat helpless in the face of the situation. "Just knowing you're here helps," Olivia said truthfully, pausing as another contraction built. She gripped the banister, breathing through the pain as Abigail had shown her. Owen watched, his expression torn between concern and a kind of reverent awe. When the contraction passed, he stepped forward, offering his arm in place of Abigail's. "May I?" he asked simply. Abigail raised an eyebrow but stepped aside. "I'll check on the doctor's progress," she said, moving toward the stairs. "He should have been here by now." Alone with Owen, Olivia found herself leaning into his solid strength as they continued pacing the hallway. "I'm sorry about this," she said between contractions. "This isn't what you signed up for." "Stop apologizing," Owen said firmly. "I knew exactly what I was getting into when I proposed." He hesitated, then added quietly, "And I meant what I said the other night. This child will be mine in every way that matters." Before Olivia could respond, another contraction hit, stronger than the ones before. She gasped, clutching Owen's arm so tightly her knuckles went white. He supported her weight effortlessly, murmuring encouragement until the pain subsided. "They're getting closer together," he observed, his voice calm despite the worry in his eyes. "Yes," Olivia agreed breathlessly. I think I should lie down now." Owen helped her back to her room, where Mrs. Holloway had prepared the bed with clean linens. He hesitated at the doorway, clearly uncertain of his place in this most intimate of moments. "Stay," Olivia said impulsively, reaching for his hand. "Unless you'd rather not." "I'll stay," Owen said without hesitation, his fingers wrapping around hers. "For as long as you want me to." The doctor arrived an hour later, by which time Olivia's labor had intensified considerably. What followed was a blur of pain, exhaustion, and determination. Through it all, Owen remained by her side, wiping her brow, offering water, and letting her crush his hand during the worst contractions. He only stepped out when the doctor needed to examine her, returning immediately at her request. As the afternoon waned and evening approached, Olivia's strength began to flag. The doctor exchanged concerned glances with Abigail, their whispered consultations growing more frequent. Finally, as Olivia rested between contractions, the doctor approached Owen. "Mr. Blackwood, a word, if I may," he said quietly. Owen reluctantly released Olivia's hand, following the doctor to the corner of the room. Their conversation was too low for Olivia to hear, but she saw Owen's face grow grave, saw him nodding with a determined set to his jaw. When he returned to her side, there was a new intensity in his expression. "Olivia," he said, taking her hand again, "the doctor says it's time to push. The baby's positioned a bit awkwardly, so it's going to be harder than usual, but I know you can do this." "I'm so tired," Olivia whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I don't know if I can." "You can," Owen said with absolute conviction. "You're the strongest person I know. You ran 50 miles while pregnant to protect your child. You hid in a silo rather than give up. This is just one more battle to win." His faith in her kindled a reserve of strength Olivia didn't know she possessed. When the next contraction came, she pushed with everything she had, Owen's encouragement in her ear, his hand steady in hers. The struggle continued for another hour, a primal battle between her body's limitations and her will to bring her child safely into the world. And then, just as the last rays of sun disappeared beyond the horizon, a new cry pierced the room, thin and outraged, but strong. "A girl," the doctor announced, holding up the squalling infant. "A fine, healthy girl." Olivia collapsed back against the pillows, exhausted beyond measure but desperate for her first glimpse of her daughter. The doctor quickly cleaned and wrapped the baby, then placed her in Olivia's trembling arms. The tiny face, red and wrinkled from the ordeal of birth, was the most beautiful thing Olivia had ever seen. A tuft of dark hair, still damp, crowned the perfect head, and when the baby's eyes flickered open briefly, they were a deep, unfocused blue. "She's perfect," Olivia whispered, running a gentle finger along the baby's cheek. Owen leaned closer, his expression one of wonder as he looked at the newborn. "She is," he agreed, his voice thick with emotion. "Absolutely perfect." In that moment, looking at the man who had promised to protect her child as his own, who had stayed by her side through the long hours of labor, Olivia felt something in her heart shift and settle into place. This was what safety felt like. This was what home meant. "Would you like to hold your daughter?" she asked softly. Owen's eyes widened at the question, at the implication of her words. With infinite care, he accepted the bundled infant, cradling her against his broad chest as if she were made of the most fragile porcelain. The baby, surprisingly, quieted in his arms, her tiny fingers curling around one of his when he offered it. "Hello, little one," he murmured, his voice gentler than Olivia had ever heard it. "Welcome to the world." Watching them together, this man, who had no blood connection to her child, but who looked at her with such tenderness, Olivia felt the last of her reservations melting away. Whatever arrangement had brought them together, whatever dangers still lurked on the horizon, this moment was real. This feeling was true. "What will you name her?" Abigail asked, appearing at Olivia's side with a cup of water. Olivia looked at Owen, still mesmerized by the infant in his arms. "I was thinking." "Hope," she said. "Hope Blackwood." Owen looked up, his eyes meeting hers over their daughter's head. "Hope," he repeated, a smile spreading across his face. "It's perfect." As the doctor and Abigail bustled around, tending to the final details of the birth, Owen returned the baby to Olivia's arms, then surprised her by leaning down to place a kiss on her forehead. Unlike the chaste pecks they had shared before, this one lingered, his lips warm against her skin, conveying emotions too complex for words. "Thank you," he whispered against her hair. "For what?" Olivia asked, her free hand reaching up to touch his cheek. "For trusting me," Owen replied simply. "With your life, with hers. It's a gift I'll spend the rest of my days trying to deserve." In that moment, exhausted and elated, with her newborn daughter in her arms and her husband's promise warming her heart, Olivia knew that what had begun as an arrangement of convenience had become something far more precious. Not just a sanctuary from danger, but a foundation for a future she had never dared to imagine. The first weeks with Hope were a blur of sleepless nights, new routines, and overwhelming love. Olivia marveled at how completely the tiny infant had captured her heart from the first moment. Even more surprising was the natural way Owen took to fatherhood. He was unfailingly patient, willing to walk the floors with Hope when she was fussy, eager to help with diaper changes and baths, and proudly showing her off to the ranch hands who stopped by to meet the newest Blackwood. No one, seeing them together, would have guessed that Owen wasn't Hope's biological father. He doted on her with a devotion that touched Olivia deeply and confirmed what she had already begun to suspect, that her feelings for her husband had grown far beyond gratitude or convenience. October brought cooler weather, the first hints of autumn coloring the landscape around the ranch. Hope was thriving, growing stronger each day, her features becoming more defined. To Olivia's relief, she saw nothing of Victor Caldwell in her daughter's face. The baby had her own dark hair, and as the weeks passed, her blue eyes began to darken to a shade that matched Olivia's green ones. One crisp evening, with Hope finally asleep after a long day of fussing, Olivia joined Owen on the porch. He had taken to sitting outside in the evenings, giving her time alone with the baby, but always waiting for her if she chose to join him. "She's finally down," he asked as Olivia settled into the chair beside his. "For now," Olivia confirmed with a tired smile. "Mrs. Holloway thinks she might be starting to teethe, though it seems early." "Blackwoods are always ahead of schedule," Owen said with mock seriousness, then caught himself. "That is, I didn't mean to presume—" "Don't," Olivia interrupted gently. "Don't apologize for claiming her. You've been more of a father to her in these few weeks than most men are in a lifetime." Owen's expression softened. "She makes it easy. She's a remarkable little person already." They sat in companionable silence for a while, watching the stars appear one by one in the darkening sky. Olivia was acutely aware of Owen's presence beside her, of the way the evening breeze carried his scent leather and soap and something uniquely him. "I received a letter from Sheriff Reynolds today," Owen said eventually, his tone carefully neutral. Olivia tensed. "About Victor?" Owen nodded. "Apparently he's been making inquiries about us, asking questions about our wedding, about the baby." Fear, which had receded to a distant concern in the weeks since Hope's birth, surged back with full force. "Do you think he'll come here again?" "Not if he has any sense," Owen said, a hard edge entering his voice. "But men like Caldwell rarely do. The sheriff warned him off, told him that you were legally my wife now, and the child legally mine. But he thought we should know that Caldwell didn't seem satisfied with that answer." Olivia shivered, wrapping her arms around herself. "What do? We live our lives," Owen said firmly. "We don't let fear of him dictate our happiness, and if he does show his face here again—" He left the sentence unfinished, but his meaning was clear. "I couldn't bear it if something happened to you because of me," Olivia said, voicing the fear that had haunted her since the day of their hasty wedding. Owen turned to look at her directly, his expression serious in the fading light. "Nothing is going to happen to me, or to you, or to Hope." "I promise you that." "You can't promise such things," Olivia protested. "Victor is dangerous and he has resources connections." "So do I," Owen countered. "And more importantly, I have something to fight for that he doesn't." "What's that?" Olivia asked. "A family," Owen said simply. The word hung between them, weighted with meaning. A family. Not just a convenient arrangement, not just a legal fiction to protect her from a dangerous man, but a true family bound by something deeper than blood or law. "Owen," Olivia began, her heart pounding with the knowledge that whatever she said next would change things between them irrevocably. "I need to tell you something." He waited, patient as always, giving her the space to find her words. "When we married, I was grateful. More grateful than I could ever express," Olivia said slowly. "You offered me safety when I had nowhere else to turn. You gave my daughter a name, a home, protection." She paused, gathering her courage. But what began as gratitude has become more, much more. Owen's expression remained carefully neutral, but Olivia saw the way his hands tightened on the arms of his chair. "More in what way?" he asked, his voice low. "I've fallen in love with you," Olivia said simply, the words both terrifying and liberating as they left her lips. "I don't expect you to feel the same way. Our arrangement was never meant to be a real marriage, but I couldn't keep pretending that my feelings for you are anything less than what they are." Owen was silent for so long that Olivia began to regret her confession. She rose from her chair, embarrassment washing over her. "I'm sorry," she said quickly. "I shouldn't have said anything. Please forget." She didn't get to finish her sentence. Owen stood in one fluid motion, his hands coming to rest gently on her shoulders, turning her to face him. In the silver moonlight, his expression was one of such naked hope that it took her breath away. "Olivia," he said, his voice rough with emotion, "I've been in love with you since I found you in that silo. I just never dared to hope you might someday feel the same. You have." Olivia whispered, hardly daring to believe what she was hearing. "Yes," Owen confirmed, one hand moving to cup her cheek. "Why do you think I proposed marriage so quickly? It wasn't just to protect you from Caldwell. It was selfish, too. I wanted you in my life, even if it was only as a convenient wife." Olivia's heart soared at his words. "It's not convenient at all," she said with a watery laugh. "I came with a dangerous enemy and a baby on the way." "The best things in life rarely come easily," Owen replied, his thumb brushing away a tear that had escaped down her cheek. "Olivia Blackwood, I love you. I love our daughter. And if you'll have me, I'd like to make this marriage real in every sense of the word." In answer, Olivia rose on her tiptoes, closing the distance between them. Their lips met in a kiss that began tentatively, but quickly deepened as months of restrained feelings broke free. Owen's arms encircled her waist, drawing her closer, while Olivia's hands found their way to his shoulders, steadying herself against the rush of emotion. When they finally parted, both breathless, Owen rested his forehead against hers. "I've wanted to do that properly since the day we wed," he admitted. "What took you so long?" Olivia teased, her heart lighter than it had been in months. "I was waiting for you to be ready," Owen said simply. "I would have waited forever if I had to." From inside the house came the faint sound of Hope beginning to cry. Olivia sighed, reluctantly stepping back from Owen's embrace. "Duty calls," she said with a rueful smile. "Our duty," Owen corrected her, taking her hand as they moved toward the door. "Let me help. We're partners now, in every sense." That night, after Hope had been fed and settled back to sleep, Owen escorted Olivia to her bedroom door as he always did. But this time, instead of bidding her good night and retiring to his own room, he hesitated, a question in his eyes. Olivia answered by opening her door wider, an invitation clear in her smile. As the door closed behind them, sealing them in the privacy of what would now truly be their shared chamber, Olivia knew that what had begun as a desperate bargain had transformed into the greatest blessing of her life. Their first night as true husband and wife was a discovery of each other's bodies, of the depth of their feelings, of the connection that had been building between them since that first meeting in the abandoned silo. Owen was gentle, patient, letting Olivia set the pace, understanding that her only previous experience had been one of violence and fear. Under his tender ministrations, she found herself healing, reclaiming parts of herself she had thought lost forever. Afterward, lying in the circle of his arms, her head resting on his chest, Olivia felt a peace she had never known before. "Thank you," she whispered against his skin. "For what?" Owen asked, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. "For showing me that love doesn't have to hurt," Olivia replied simply. "For giving me back my future." Owen's arms tightened around her. "Our future," he corrected softly. "Yours, mine, and Hope's." In the quiet darkness of their room, with Hope sleeping peacefully in her cradle nearby, Olivia allowed herself to believe that perhaps the dangers that had driven her to that silo were truly behind her. That the life she and Owen were building together was strong enough to withstand whatever challenges might come. It was a belief that would be tested sooner than either of them expected. November brought the first significant snowfall of the season. The Blackwood Ranch transformed into a winter wonderland, the rolling pastures blanketed in white, the distant mountains capped with snow. Inside the main house, a different transformation was taking place as the once convenient marriage between Owen and Olivia deepened into a relationship of genuine love and partnership. Hope, now 2 months old, was growing rapidly, her personality beginning to emerge determined like her mother, observant like her father. Owen had taken to carrying her around the ranch in a sling missus. Holloway had fashioned, proudly introducing her to the horses, the cattle, the workings of the place that would one day be her inheritance. Olivia watched them together with a heart full to bursting, marveling at how completely Owen had embraced fatherhood, how naturally Hope responded to him. No one seeing them would ever question the bond between them, blood relation or not. The news came on a Tuesday, delivered by Timothy, who had ridden into town for supplies, and returned with more than just the items on Mrs. Holloway's list. Olivia was in the kitchen, helping prepare supper when the boy burst in, his cheeks red from the cold and his eyes wide with excitement. "Mrs. Blackwood," he exclaimed, forgetting to remove his snowy boots in his haste. "There's big news from Silver Creek." Olivia tensed at the mention of the town she had fled. "What news, Timothy?" "Victor Caldwell's been arrested," the boy announced triumphantly, "for fraud and embezzlement. Sheriff Thompson from Helena came with federal marshals and took him away in handcuffs. Everyone in town was talking about it." Relief hit Olivia with such force that she had to grip the edge of the table to steady herself. "Are you certain?" she asked, hardly daring to believe it. "Yes, madam," Timothy confirmed. "Mr. Peterson at the general store said they found evidence he'd been swindling investors in his mine for years. Said he'll likely spend the rest of his life in prison." Mrs. Holloway tutted disapprovingly at the boy's dirty boots, but didn't interrupt his news. She had been told a simplified version of Olivia's history and understood the significance of what Timothy was reporting. "Where's Mr. Blackwood?" Olivia asked, needing to share this development with Owen immediately. "In the barn with Hope and Hank, checking on the new foal," Timothy replied. Olivia barely paused to throw a shawl around her shoulders before hurrying across the snowy yard to the barn. Inside, she found Owen holding Hope, pointing out the spindly-legged foal to his entranced daughter while Hank looked on with gruff affection. "Owen," Olivia called, her voice trembling with emotion. He turned at the sound, his smile fading to concern when he saw her expression. "What is it? What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong," Olivia said, a laugh bubbling up through her tears. "Everything's right. Victor's been arrested. Federal marshals took him away for fraud." Owen passed Hope carefully to Hank before crossing the barn in long strides to pull Olivia into his arms. "Are you sure?" he asked, his hands cupping her face, thumbs wiping away her tears of relief. "Timothy just brought the news from town," Olivia confirmed. "He's gone, Owen, really gone." The significance wasn't lost on either of them. With Victor Caldwell facing federal charges, the threat that had been hanging over their family was finally, truly eliminated. The last shadow on their happiness had been lifted. That evening, with Hope asleep in her cradle and the house quiet around them, Owen and Olivia sat before the fire in their bedroom, hands entwined, still processing the news. "I keep expecting to wake up and find this was all a dream," Olivia admitted, leaning her head against Owen's shoulder. "That I'm still hiding in that silo, hungry and afraid." "It's real," Owen assured her, pressing a kiss to her temple. "All of it. Victor's arrest, our marriage, our daughter." "This life we're building. Our life," Olivia echoed, savoring the words. "I never thought I could have this kind of happiness again. After what happened in Silver Creek, I thought I'd spend the rest of my days looking over my shoulder, always running." "And now," Owen prompted gently. "Now I'm looking forward," Olivia said, turning to meet his gaze. "To watching hope grow, to building our ranch, to growing old by your side." Owen's smile was tender as he traced the curve of her cheek with his fingertips. "I like the sound of that." "I love you, Owen Blackwood," Olivia said simply. "Not because you saved me, though you did. Not because you gave Hope your name, though I'll be forever grateful for that. I love you for who you are, the most honorable, kind, stubborn man I've ever known." "Stubborn." Owen repeated with a raised eyebrow. "Definitely stubborn," Olivia confirmed with a laugh. "It's one of your most endearing qualities." Owen pulled her closer, his arms encircling her waist. "Well, Mrs. Blackwood, I love you too. For your courage, your intelligence, and yes, for your own fair share of stubbornness." Their lips met in a kiss that held all the promise of their future together, a future that had seemed impossible just a few months earlier, when a desperate pregnant woman had sought refuge in an abandoned silo, and a cowboy had offered her not just shelter, but a home. Spring arrived with a riot of wildflowers painting the Montana landscape in vibrant colors. Hope, now 8 months old, was crawling everywhere, exploring her world with boundless curiosity and infectious joy. Her first word had been "Dada," uttered one morning as Owen lifted her from her crib, and Olivia had watched with tears in her eyes as her husband's face transformed with pure delight. The Blackwood Ranch was thriving under their joint stewardship. Olivia had proven to have a good head for business, helping Owen negotiate better prices for their cattle and investing some of their profits in expanding their holdings. They had purchased the adjacent property when old Mr. Jenkins decided to retire to Oregon, nearly doubling the size of their ranch, on a perfect April morning, with the sun warming the earth and birds singing in the cottonwoods. Olivia found Owen in the eastern pasture, checking on a pregnant mare. Hope was with Mrs. Holloway, helping bake by banging wooden spoons on pots while the patient cook prepared bread for the day. Owen looked up as Olivia approached on horseback, a smile spreading across his face at the sight of her. Even after months of marriage, real marriage, he still looked at her as if she were the most wondrous thing he'd ever seen. "To what do I owe this pleasure?" he asked as she dismounted and joined him by the fence. "Can't a wife simply want to see her husband in the middle of the day?" Olivia teased, accepting his kiss with a contented sigh. "She can and should," Owen agreed, his arm slipping around her waist. "But that particular smile suggests you have news." Olivia's heart skipped a beat at his perceptiveness. "I do, actually," she admitted, suddenly nervous despite her certainty that he would be pleased. "I saw Doc Williams yesterday when I was in town." Owen's expression immediately shifted to concern. "Are you ill? Why didn't you tell me you weren't feeling well?" "I'm not ill," Olivia assured him quickly. "I'm pregnant." Owen stared at her for a long moment, as if processing her words. Then, with a whoop of joy that startled the mare in the nearby corral, he lifted Olivia off her feet, spinning her in a circle before setting her gently back on the ground. "A baby," he said, wonder filling his voice. "Our baby." "Yes," Olivia confirmed, laughing at his exuberance. "Due in November, the doctor thinks." Owen placed a reverent hand on her still flat stomach. "Hello in there, little Blackwood," he murmured, then looked up at Olivia with eyes bright with emotion. "How are you feeling? Do you need to rest? Should you be riding?" "I'm perfectly fine," Olivia assured him, covering his hand with her own. "And Doc Williams said moderate riding is fine for now." I'll have to be more careful as the pregnancy progresses, of course. Of course, Owen agreed seriously, before breaking into another grin. A baby. Hope is going to be a big sister. She'll be a wonderful one, Olivia said confidently. She has her father's kind heart. Owen's expression softened at her words. She has her mother's strength, he countered. Between the two of you, I'm the luckiest man in Montana territory. As they stood together in the spring sunshine, planning for this new addition to their family, Olivia marveled at the journey that had brought them to this moment. From a desperate hiding place in an abandoned silo to a thriving ranch and a growing family, it was more than she could have dreamed possible in those dark days of fear and uncertainty. "What are you thinking?" Owen asked, noticing her introspection. "I'm thinking about that day in the silo," Olivia replied honestly. "When you found me hiding and said those words that changed everything, "You don't have to hide from me," Owen nodded, understanding in his eyes. "I meant them then, and I mean them now. No more hiding, no more running. Just us, facing whatever comes together." "Together," Olivia agreed, rising on tiptoes to kiss him beneath the vast Montana sky, their second child growing between them, their future spreading out before them as boundless and bright as the land they called home. In November, just as the first snows began to dust the mountains, Olivia gave birth to a son. Owen James Blackwood entered the world with lusty cries and a shock of dark hair that matched his father's. Hope, now 15 months old and toddling everywhere, was fascinated by her baby brother, peering into his cradle with solemn concentration before pronouncing him nice, her highest compliment. As Olivia watched Owen holding their son, with Hope leaning against his knee, she felt a completeness that once would have seemed impossible. From that desperate day in the silo to this moment of perfect joy, it had been a journey of courage, trust, and ultimately, love. "What are you smiling about?" Owen asked, looking up from their children to meet her gaze. "Just thinking that sometimes the darkest moments can lead to the brightest futures," Olivia replied. "If I hadn't been hiding in that silo, if I hadn't been checking my fence line that day," Owen continued. "If you hadn't said those words." Owen smiled, the love in his eyes clear and unwavering. "You don't have to hide from me." "No," Olivia agreed, her heart full to overflowing. "Never again." And she never did.